Hey John, how's it going?
It's going great, Pete. How are you tonight?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. Doing just fine. We are on to episode 6 with someone that I think you know pretty well. Is that true?
I do. It's my friend Alex Belanger from Fresno Public Schools. A really interesting guy, Alex. Anybody who chose to work in Alaska for a portion of his career, that just says a lot about who you are and what your character is. But really smart guy, and he's doing some great things out in Fresno. And he's got a really interesting project that when we were talking the other day, he brought it up, and I thought it was worth having a conversation with you here on the podcast. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say.
I'm excited too. I think we haven't focused narrowly on necessarily a sort of set of projects or initiatives. So thinking about the concepts of leadership within a very focused area is going to be new for us. I'm intrigued to see where that conversation with Alex goes. And as you said, he's a pretty interesting speaker. So hopefully we'll get something fun out of the conversation.
All right. Well, let's get to it.
All right. Welcome, Alex. We are so delighted to be speaking with you today.
Alex, great to see you, my friend. Appreciate you being here. Our podcast is called Building Capacity, and it's all about leadership and educational facilities. And I really admire you for your leadership in this area. It's one of those things you're always out there, whether it's at conferences or in walkthroughs with other school districts. You're always looking to lend a hand, and you're always looking to put yourself out there. And you've had a really interesting career between public and private, and all over the country and all over the world. So I think you're a great person to really be here and share some words of wisdom with us. And you actually called me the other day to check on me after the active shooters situation at the Naval Academy, knowing where I was, and appreciate that you did that, and we got to talking a little bit. And one of the things that you brought up was the new project that you're working on for the aviation facility. So we were really curious to know, can you tell us a little bit about that, where it started, how it got there, and particularly your role in this, because I'm sure that you had to take an active role in leading the charge to get this thing built. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, absolutely, super excited. This is as you know, there's a need for aviation, all new students, right? New employees. There's about 800,000 positions exiting the industry every year, and so there's a shortfall. Whether we're a mechanic, a maintenance person, a flight attendant, a pilot, air traffic controller, the need is great, and we see it on the news, see it on TV. This is not something new. This is something that they were projecting years before, even before COVID. We're blessed at this district to have really strong superintendents that have good vision and a critical education program. They said, "Hey, what about aviation? Can we do it?" So we started looking into it, and the first answer you always get is no, right? Because that's kind of what we all deal with, right? And so we're like, okay, well, no sounds fine, but let's figure out the way around it. So most school districts and everything, they build a facility, say at our school or something next to an airport. But our superintendent and our team was like, no, let's try to figure this, put it right on the airport. So here in California, there's lots of rules and restrictions and lots of bureaucracy, which makes it fun to navigate, similar to the East Coast. And so one of the things is that, okay, well, who's holding all the strings on this? Well, it goes all the way up to changing, things in legislature, changing basically how we do school construction in California, all the way down to the Department of Transportation and then Caltrans Aviation. And so getting approvals, and that took several years just to, one, identify the need idea. California Department of Education jumped on board. However, still getting through those rules and regulations that manage what happens on and off an airport. So we're really lucky here in California. We have, especially in the Central Valley, we have a airport called Chandler Airport. That airport was the flight school for a lot of the stuff happening in World War II. There was a lot of different things happening there. It's a business type airport for people commuting all across the Western United States. So we said, what if we put it here? And also, as you see, a lot of small airports, the presence or people actually leasing space in those are actually diminishing. There's not as much happening. And so we met with their city, and they said, yeah, we'd love to do that with you. But we hear there's a problem in doing it. So we figured out, well, let's figure it out. Well, 2 years later, we got the approvals. We got everything changed, got the zones changed so we could actually do construction. Then we go through the lease process and go through the evaluation. And luckily, our city sees the opportunity, which we're blessed in that area, and then the district. And then we said, okay, how do we do this? How do we fund it? And so we got real creative and working through state and local dollars and potentially future federal dollars if interested. And which is opportunity with this podcast is gaining interest and other people become aware of the opportunity. When we're done, this will be the first facility in the nation that's like this. There's aviation close to airports. How they kind of evolved over time. This will be a dual enrollment. When you graduate from here, you graduate from your local community college. Not only that, if you follow the process, you'll also graduate with your private pilot license, and you'll have your certifications in basic maintenance. So it's actually a great opportunity and an introduction to aeronautics and air control. Now I didn't memorize all the different pathways, but there's let me just go here real quickly. Also, they'll also be able to have both manned and unmanned aircraft, so they're coming through drone certifications. So the interesting thing part about where we are, especially in the area that this is being built in, is 86 to 90% of our community lives below the poverty line. So the opportunity for this facility that's just in their back door that's never been available is actually now available. And so the story is amazing. Our workforce within the Central Valley and the just the intelligence and the capacity and capability of our students is amazing. So this is just something to take it to a whole nother level. But that's just not good enough because how many kids start off in high school and said, "Hey, I want to become a pilot." So it starts at a very young age, and so we're looking at programs where we can actually go through and actually create simulators and do programs always starting from the primary grades all the way up through middle school and then into high school, and providing drones and access. And also, I don't know if you've probably been to local museums and things of that nature, but we're also having an area where young students can come in and get tangible access to aeronautics history, parts and pieces, kind of create that opportunity. And then the neat thing about schools, and one of the things that school districts do, like our experience, John, all across the nation, is they have all these amazing facilities. However, after 4:30 in the evening, they shut down. So we're also making this available for our adults in our community to be able to have access all so being able to do adult education as well. And so just that whole opportunity to kind of lift up our community.
So this sounds like an amazing program all over the place, but I want to ask you a question of something that I picked up on. You use the word we an awful lot when you're talking about we did this and we did that. And to me, that's what great leaders do. You share the share, share the success stories, but take all of the blame. Can you talk about what your role is with, I'm sure you got some war stories about how you had to navigate some of these challenges with the board, with the community, with the legislature and all of that. How did you get past some of that? How did you personally lead some of these things through?
And who you were working with. You made references a little bit at moments to sort of divine intervention. We were lucky or we were blessed,
Right,
but there
absolutely.
were obviously some other players in there helping to make this happen. How did this come together? Because it's remarkable.
So our superintendent, Bob Nelson, and there at the time, Deputy Superintendent Misty Herr said, "Hey, we need to make this happen." And when you have top-down leadership like that, it organizes different departments. And so within Fresno Unified, I'm the chief executive over operations, which means I'm facilities maintenance and custodial. And so on the facilities, we have the latitude to help. If you have a dream, we can build it. And my experience in working outside the industry is I work with venture capitalists, developers, and if you just let me know what your vision is, I can make it happen. So that's what I've been able to do with the district and our pathways, and because of that, we've been very successful securing matching dollars from the state. We just recently closed out about $210 million worth of grant dollars from the feds and then locally, and that's something we did in the last 2 years. And so our vision works. The other person, our career technical education department, we said, look, we really need a strong leader, and this became a former school site leader, but a gentleman by the name of Bradley Barrett. And he has a heart for CTE, a heart for business. So he became a really strong advocate and support. Another gentleman by the name of Jeremy Ward, who had the vision, it was a former high school principal that had our first wall-to-wall CTE school that that we worked with industry partners and said, okay, what is CTE really? It's not just going and making a box, right, that you're going to take home and your dad puts a saw in it or that sort of thing. This is our ashtrays when we were kids, right? It's actually,
You can't do those anymore.
yeah, no, you can't make those in school anymore. So, but we did, and then so really what this is they we just dream big, and so what it means is everybody full court press, writing synopsis, PowerPoints, then also writing letters to the state, using local advocates to help us, do that with the state, local. Local delegates, whether they're that are in politics, and then just basically a continuous not giving up full. Hey, we want to do this. We know we can do it. And at the very end, John Gordon, he's the head guy from California Department of Education, said that he became a huge advocate and support. And I think that was really the turning point. And then that really helped us push through. And then Caltrans got on board after the city of Fresno got on board. And so, yeah, there is, because one, it had never been done before, and two, because you had to bring all these different public agencies together to have a relationship. And so my role in some of these cases is typing the letters. However, my role in a lot of these cases is being the cheerleader and helping push it through. Right, you're just making sure everything happens. And we stay on top of it. So I would say the success I would give to, like, not only my role and my position, but also our leaders in critical education.
It's so wise for you to say that, I think, because it's easy for all of those people, given their roles, to get distracted. This is a big endeavor. It's really complicated. It's the first of its kind, so there's no template. So that's extra work. I think it's really interesting for you to recognize the need to be in that role as cheerleader, and to kind of push it forward. I'm also loving you said, what is CTE really? I think I have had this reaction recently, just thinking about all the ways in which CTE is more than shop class and
Yeah.
automotive class from when I was in high school. It's so diverse. I'm here in Massachusetts, and there are over 40 different programs that the state recognizes that are far beyond automotive and beauty school. And I think this is fascinating. Are there other programs there in the district like this one that gave you the template for really
Absolutely.
expanding beyond it?
So I think we should, I guess we're going back in time, kind of the Scooby Doo version, right? So we're going back. Academies of Nashville put out they put out every year, but this is in Nashville, Tennessee. In Nashville, Tennessee, they received a bunch of new arrivals from the Middle East, and then there was a lot of different people coming into Nashville. And what ended up happening is there were some challenges in their education, the challenges with higher ed. And so the Chamber of Commerce, the local businesses, the school district all get together and they said, "Hey, what if we do this differently?" And so they got together the Four Down Foundation. They created a marketing firm called Pencil, and a couple others, and I apologize, but they brought everybody together and they said, "Okay, every high school is going to be a wall-to-wall career technical education school. So if you go to school, you're going to school about science and medicine. Another one's all about music and arts and that sort of thing, which makes sense in Nashville." But really, what it showed me is that we weren't dreaming big enough, right? When I went to, again, when I went to high school and you went to CTE, you learned how to change a light bulb and do your oil and a tire, and that's basically it. And so, what we really asked, okay, who's our industry partners and what do they really need? And so we sat down with, again, Bob Nelson, who's at the time was chief of staff for Mike Hansen, and we sat down and said, okay, what is this? And so for 5 days straight, we said, okay, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for Fresno Unified? What do we need to do in the Central Valley? And knowing that we still have a very strong comprehensive program, we said, okay, we have some magnet schools that we could reimagine as wall-to-wall critical education. And so that's what we did. And then we have some choice high schools, or we actually have comprehensive high schools that we just built programs on the campus. But it's not just a program. Like if you go to our HVAC and plumbing and construction management pathway at Fresno High School, you'll actually see better equipment and tools than you'll see at our local union training. So um, when our kids graduate, they can actually be a functional member. And the goal is for outside agencies, outside contractors, unions to look at our school site as an opportunity for employment. And they pull students right out. And then we realized, like, hold on a second, these programs are great, but if no one's hiring our kids, so that's why industry partners became really important. And then we realized the union becomes really important. So then we put together an MOU with a trades union to say, look, if once our students come out of our programs, which they certify, that they enter into their first year of apprenticeship, which is something just hadn't been done in the Western United States. And so that's something we pushed through to make sure our students had opportunity. And then the last piece is like, okay, what is our industry in Fresno? Ours is heavy agriculture, right? Heavy fruits, vegetables, processing, trucks, heavy equipment. So the industry partner became Betts Enterprises. And Mike Betts, who's the founder of it, said, hey, let's dream big. Let's dream really big. And let's say when your students graduate, I want to give them a job. That's it. And so now when our students, they go through our program, they're now working on a little electric big rig. And so they actually, when they graduate into the second year of UTI. Or we just put in a logistics lab for our students that are on alternative ed school that are credit recovery. So we built a program around how can we get students certifications that the industry acknowledges that's going to happen in 3 month, 4 month, 6 month period. And so we did logistics. And so now we have students that have just graduated out our logistics program at our alternative ed school. They're just going right straight to work for Amazon, and they're making $45 an hour. So those are the things that we kind of move towards, but it has to have industry partners. There has to be accountability, and it has to be accountability in education. And then the last piece is that we learned that you can't build anything, you can't design anything unless you have lesson plans. And those lesson plans drive, and the industry partners have to inform the lesson plans, and that informs design and construction. Because without that, there's no accountability. And if it becomes a one-hit wonder, kind of like everybody wants a garden at their school, but as soon as the teacher leaves, the garden goes fallow. Same with CTE programs. There has to be something that survives past the principal, past the teachers, that's ongoing. And so that's where industry partners, curriculum, and everything's accountable.
So, how do you plan for that? Because all the stuff that you're mentioning, it's going through my head that that's got to be a real fast-moving thing. You've planned for a capital program for the district for many years, and then you got these great ideas that get thrown in that you want to adapt to, and it's like I imagine that you have to
Mm.
shift gears on the fly.
You
How do
do.
you deal
You
with that?
do. Well, you have a lot of meetings and a lot of lots and lots of meetings. And then it comes down to is okay, we all don't have enough money, right? We have right now we're blessed with a $500 million bond, but our need is actually $2.4 billion just to get our existing buildings to 80%. That being said, there's need for new construction. Needs to replace existing. And so when we do that, then it says, okay, if we do this work, and granted, we chased grant dollars, and so we had matching funds. So of all the projects I talked about, each pathway received about 3.5 to $1.5 million to $3.5 million, depending on which pathway, whether it's a bond or new construction or what have you. And so once we received that funding, then we petitioned our board, which we got approved to go out and do it. Then our board said, hey, this is what we're doing, but it's going to supplant these projects. Then our board, bed members come and say, hey, you can talk to their constituents and say, this is what we got to do. And it's a go or no go. And luckily, our board is agile enough and they are visionaries, and we're just really lucky. And so what ended up happening is we went after all of it and we're successful.
What, what's your role in your personal role in all of that? Are you chief whiner helping everybody just kind of hear that there's stuff to be done? Are you advocating in a particular way with certain groups to make sure that they're thinking about these things and they're not traumatized by it, they're not scared by it? I think we've all been in rooms where you put a number, whether it's an individual product or a giant amount of need, and everybody, you can see them just kind of glare up or get scared. What are you doing individually in your role to help people come to terms with the scale of what you're talking about, whether
So
it's the big problem or one of these initiatives like
right.
the flight program?
I think the best approach, the way to look at that is like doing sales on the outside, right? You don't, when you get ready to be at that last RFP to get to sell that product or whatever you're going to be doing, um, if you show up on the day that RFPs due and try to submit, you're not going to win. This is something that you lay the groundwork with that goes, like for me, it's understanding what our community needed and then start gearing people in that direction to work with different department leaders to say, okay, this is our idea, this is where we're headed, and then try to understand what the real need is and what our community wants to support, and then you marry them together, and then it becomes a process, right? Then you work heavy community development, industry partner development, working with their leaders, working with their board. Then the other big piece is education. Like a lot of people are asked to make a decision on something they didn't even fully understand. And what is that value and how does that compare? And then what is our end result? What's the product, right? We do know in critical education or a when you look at education as a whole, when kids are working together, especially now, our graduation rate goes through the roof. And so our graduation rate at our CT schools is 99%, and in some cases 100%. And so really what it is like I was an athlete and I was into arts and everything else. And so I wanted to go to school because I wanted to be an athlete. A lot of these students, they don't have access to athleticism or that's not their goal. And they're already career minded or career oriented. And so that's where they head. Or they also use this as they go to the comprehensive school, and for 2 sections out of the day or 3 sections out of the day, they come to this magnet school, or vice versa. They stay there and then compete at their choice high school for sports and things of that nature. And so it's like what it is that we talk about creating a groundswell, because it happens in the community. The need has to be identified, and then you create awareness. And so you get involved in communities, you get involved in economic development groups, you get involved with churches, church boards, get in charge of where are things happening and where are the needs at. And then once you understand that, then you start working with your city officials, your neighboring schools, and like the opportunity to rise up. You all rise up together, and then you work with your industry partners, and then you work with your leaders in house, because a lot of them this is all new, right? This approach is new and everything's new. So you got to create that awareness and and just that need to work together. And then I personally got involved in working on economic development, being boards, working with the city of Fresno, get on their capital project improvement, just so I had access and creating relationships, working with the city manager, that sort of thing. And then you have to have a leader. Like if my encouragement is to leaders, especially superintendents and deputy superintendents or associate superintendents, when they come in to lead, it's really important that if they provide that direction, that's clear to everyone. But once that becomes clear, then it kind of opens the doors, right? A lot of times when things become political, no one really wants to make a strong or hard stance, because what if it's wrong, right? How's that going to impact me down the road? Well, someone like me or John or you are just like, okay, well, I need to get something done. So I really can't deal with wishy-washy. I got to deal with this. So that's just where we had to create that mission, create teams, identify. I learned this from a gentleman by the name of Carlo Perdini. He was the associate superintendent for a neighboring school district. And he really talked about what made his school district and what he did successful. And they were very successful. So what I did is I really listened to him and took a lot of mentorship from him on what it takes to design, how to attract quality teachers, what is a vision of a quality teacher. Then you go look at other school districts that are trying to do the same thing. What did they learn? What did they do? What did they not do? What could we improve on? And then the whole goal, just like you would do, I take a business approach, like I'm working with a developer and saying, okay, what's the market share of this, of this product or this business? Where should it be? How should it be positioned? Who's our target clientele? That sort of thing. And then create a plan. And then same thing you do on the academic side is just similar, but you do that through education, through awareness, through professional development, through opportunity. And then when it came to CTE, we really needed to create a educational platform that the trades would approve, because a lot of the students graduating from high school. I'm all over the board, but you'll be able to cut this out. But that we learned from high school is our students weren't passing entrance exams. So we could either teach for the entrance exam, which is basically general ed, or we could do something different. So what we did is we worked with a gentleman by the name of Chuck Rojas, who's his head guy over at Trade Council. He created a curriculum called MC3 that then became the curriculum, and we certified our school site teachers instead of union members to teach this program. And so when our students then all of a sudden become accepted. And then we also realize students can sniff out if something's BS, right? Or if it's just placating or we're just trying to get them in school. So then we said, okay, what are certifications that the industry accepts? And then we train towards that. And so it's all, and the reason why I'm saying that is we have to all these little pieces, all these little levers you got to pull for it to actually work. Because if you don't, then it just comes apart. Or then no one sees the vision, or it doesn't get finished, or it changes and changes and changes.
How do you balance your time? Because I know that when I was with New York City, a lot of buildings, and to do it right, you feel like you need to be everywhere all at once, and everything you just
You do.
described is very time intensive. How do you deal with that?
Well, the I grew up in a construction household, and then my wife, when we got married, she was running our construction business, and I was doing this kind of work. And so our kids have grown up in that environment. And so the nice thing is, it's kind of grew up in the military. It's part of life. And so this work is not a 9 to 5 job. Sometimes it could be a 5 to midnight job. It could be, other times it's not so much. I'm definitely mission based. And that's why I'm saying blessed. When I returned back to California, one of the goals was I want to give back. If you look at the city of Fresno, there's articles on redlining where people were held back, and it just the opportunity to change our community is just amazing. And a good example of that is our last bond we just went after. We also looked at an equity lens, and I know not everybody likes the word equity, but equity is a big deal. There's a need for it. And so when we looked at our community, we we uh, we looked at the areas that have greatest needs, and one of the areas that had always been identified as a greatest need was our area in Southwest Fresno. However, this is the first time in our known history that it's moved off the high risk. It went from it went from red to orangish yellow kind of indication, which means that there's progress. And so that progress means that there's success. And what that means is us pushing as a district, working with at all the different levels of departments, working with the city of Fresno, quite frankly, hold them accountable, working with our industry partners and pushing into our community actually works. And then we're developing specific plans that actually work and holding developers and rolling the city accountable. And then what it does is it shows, okay, this is a success. If that's a success, what else can we do? And then we start looking, okay, what are the other areas of influence? And so you start taking that same success and branching out. So we're going to be focusing on 3 other areas in our community that weren't as high risk as Southwest Fresno is. So it's pretty cool. And
John,
the neat thing about this is my wife grew up in this area, so it was for her. It was kind of like her coming home. Yeah.
John, you talked earlier about one of the things that leaders do is share the responsibility, take the blame and share the responsibility. But Alex, you're talking about the other thing that leaders do is hold everybody around them accountable, and not just the people that work for them, but the people that they work for and the community they serve. You were describing a really powerful message, and I think you talked about rambling before. You weren't rambling. You were describing how crazy complicated it is to
Yeah.
do this work. And
Yeah.
and what's great about the story you're telling is, despite the fact that you reference being blessed and being lucky and all of those things and having visionary leadership, it sounded to me like those are the tools that are necessary no matter what community you're in, no matter what its financial situation, no matter what its leadership situation. That's what you need to do if you're sitting in the chair that you're sitting in to help move it forward, which is, I think it's a great blueprint. It's a complicated blueprint that you laid out, but it's a great blueprint.
Well, if you look at when I first started here, they were doing about $1.5 million to $2 million a month. We currently are closing about $22 million a month, and so it's not a huge portion of work compared to like New York, but when you're 90 square miles and you're 8 million square feet, it's a lot in our community. And quite frankly, we tapped the capacity of our community when we did it. So I think some of the best leadership was like when John was asked during COVID to show up with his cooling trucks, right, to help with what was happening with all the deaths there in New York. That's a story I told over and over again. Or how do we open up for first responders and provide resources? That stuff doesn't happen without leadership, right? The same thing here with what we're doing. If our teachers and our leaders and everybody are so tasked with the works they have to do on a daily basis, the chance to change it, right, flip the script and go a different direction, doesn't happen without leaders that are willing to lean in and give that extra time. And then I have a background in commercial construction, business development, working with venture capitalists, and in developing in Alaska, Central America, and South Pacific. And so, because of that experience, I was able to give back and say, look, this works, this doesn't work. Because I'm real and I'm honest, we're able to have those honest conversations with my leadership and says, look, this doesn't work unless you do this. And then I come from a family that was heavy into education. Another way to look at it, when I would work, say I'd work with a developer and this guy says, I want to develop this resort to such a place. And then you start, okay, so who's the clientele and how are you going to keep them engaged for a short term, long term facility lease or short term hotel lease? Well, what is that? And then so you have to understand what makes that work. Then that means you have to understand educational process, how things are being taught. When it comes to schools, it's like, okay, when that door closes, what does that environment look like? All the way down to what's intuitive design, what's an extension of that classroom, how does it affect and impact students? And then you have to design in that space so that not only the teacher has the ability to move around, but the students do and they feel comfortable. In addition to that, you have to have buy-in in the building so that that teacher doesn't want to leave and go to another neighboring district or another school site, but they're willing to stick in with that students that we have, then our students that are coming that are new arrivals and they're learning English, or we have this district about 1,500 students or 15,000 students in alternative education. And so there could be some dynamics that are tough to navigate. So these are things that, if you have a good space that's comfortable and you want to come work there, like a cork board behind your head when you come to work, right? It's when you have those kind of things and you can rest on them and you feel comfortable, right? Why do people want to go to Starbucks instead of McDonald's? Well, because it feels good and coffee tastes good. The same clientele is in both, but you're just that's the scenario, right? So the other thing that's interesting is we can do really cool, effective design and really motivate and kind of transport that end user to a new place. And it really doesn't cost that much more. It doesn't cost more at all. We can actually go to stores depending on how we use our structural and then not waste the dollars, right? And so, to me, the opportunities there is just school construction just hasn't experienced a lot of it because we kind of do things the same. It's a rote post-military design with finger plans and just giant group housing, what have you.
But that's the key, right? And you mentioned it earlier. You got to be honest with people, and you got to be able to take the risks, because in the public sector, people don't want to take risks because there's very little benefit and there's potentially a much bigger downside. But in order to be successful, to me, being a leader in the public arena is that you got to push that envelope. You got to do what's right for the project, the children, and be able to throw yourself out there. And that's not easy.
And for both of you, because you both speak with that kind of tone, how do you maintain the energy to be able to take risks? Where do you find the resource inside yourselves? Where have you found the resource inside yourselves to be that risk friendly? Because most people are risk averse. Most people aren't willing to push themselves. And most people think of facilities leaders that did actually roll out the equipment to help during COVID, but they think of them as reactive people. They think of them as the people that wait and say, I need power here, and they go get power here. I need water there, and I go get water here. But when both of you talk about it as though it's something you were preparing for, you were planning for. You didn't know what the emergency was, but you were laying the groundwork to deal with it. And then sometimes you're even seeing it. So where do you find that energy, or where do you find that inspiration inside your brains? And I'm scared to ask both of you where you find things in your brains, but where do you find those things in your brains?
All right, so it comes from multiple different areas, right? A lot of it's upbringing, lifestyle, and family. A lot of it's relationship, and what's your mission and who are you. Another one is how do you transform a community if you're not a strong leader, and how do you help push it? And then you also have to feel that your role is imperative, right? Your role is imperative to get things. You're not the only person, and obviously you can't be narcissistic about it, but your role is imperative as part of it. And like I like to tell a lot of people, I'm a king maker, not a king. I like being service. I like being part of that whirlwind that helps make things happen. There's other people that are amazing leaders, and there are superintendents and our deputy superintendents, and bless their hearts, right? Because that's their mission. My mission is to get all the pieces together, and present them to you for success. And I've, in my mind, in my background, and my experience, I've tested all the different scenarios. And quite frankly, because our jobs, we have to have a plan for every single one. And I know that with a strong probability, we're going to be successful. I mean, even dealing with COVID, post COVID, dealing with some of the dollars that came out, which was a blessing and a curse at the same time. We were asked to say, hey, we have, over $100 million that we need to spend, and we have a year to do it. What can you do? Well, we hadn't designed build before, but I knew there's the only way to do it. And so what we did is we went through to our community and said, hey, we're going to kick out $60 million worth of HVAC work. And we're going to kick it all has to be done, has to be designed, purchased, and installed before September, end of September. And well, we were successful. Like I'm sure John had to do a lot of the same stuff. It's just like, okay, what are you going to do to pull this off? Because there's no funds to back it up, right? So what are you going to do? So you have to just make it happen. You have to lead. You have to be in space, and you have to encourage. You got people buy into the vision, and then once they see it, they actually after the fact they go. Because we had companies like Schneider Electric, train that says, "Hey, we're going to back out. We don't think it's possible." So it took a little tiny engineering shop that was just starting out, and a very really healthy New England sheet metal company that was really good at HVAC. And we said, "Hey, let's go make it happen." So we put out solicitation. Three people came to it. We selected two of them. Actually, four people came. Selected two of them. We went to work, and it all worked out. But it comes with a lot of effort, right? You have to see the vision, you have to believe the vision, and you have to make it happen.
Yeah. And for me, it goes back to what Alex said earlier, which is, me and my life and my career, I've been pretty blessed as well. And I'll tell you a little story. During COVID, I had some time to go back and I started doing a little bit about my genealogy. And the first ancestor that I could actually find that was documented that came to the United States was a German guy named Augustinius Trui, and he immigrated here in the 1840s. And in 1861, he signed up for the Union Army in the Civil War, got shot at the Second Battle of Bull Run, and came home. Was put in what they called the Invalid Corps at the time, which is people who had been wounded and couldn't serve on the front lines anymore, but were still in the military to help people on services at the back end. And that to me in my family set a history of service. And in my family, I've had role models. I had a grandfather who was a judge. I had another grandfather who worked for the MTA. My father was in the Navy. I had people who were in the military, World War II, Vietnam. And it's just, I think for me, who I am and what I was taught growing up. And when I went to college and went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, became an engineer, uh, this was my skill set, but that wasn't why I took the jobs that I did. I took the jobs that I did because I could use my skills in an area where I could make the most difference, and that just happened to be educational facilities. So it's the person who you are in public service. That's where you get the energy. You just have to look at the faces of the kids that you're serving every day. And Alex, we started this conversation talking about the aviation program and all the things that it's going to do for the kids, all the things that it's going to do for the community. And if that's what gets you out of bed in the morning, and that's what gives you the energy and the drive to navigate all these challenges, then that's what you got to leverage. That's what you got to do.
Right.
I love hearing that from both of you, right? Just that commitment to service, commitment to community, the mission focus. I mean, thank you both for doing it on behalf of anybody who's listening and people in your communities that you've served. It's phenomenal. But I'm actually thinking we need to keep talking about it because we need to stimulate more people to be leaders. And not everybody's going to follow the military path that you described, John. They're going to go through, maybe
Mhm.
they're going to be educators, maybe they're going to do something else. But I think we need to keep thinking about it because it is what it's going to take to continue to stimulate the kind of successes that you're having, Alex. It doesn't happen if there's someone standing in your chair who just kind of waits to be told by the superintendent what to do and waits for the state to pass the rules and waits for someone at the airport to sign off on something. I mean, you have to make those things happen. You have to be motivated to do it. And kudos to both of you for the work that you've done over the years. And in this case, Alex, really exciting to hear you talk about it.
Well, I think it's also I don't want to miss the opportunity that you have to have a good staff and develop a good staff. And look in what we do in our industry, it's not like you get what you have, right? Sometimes you get a chance to hire new staff, but a lot of times you get what's here. And then learning how to get the best out of who you have is probably the most important. I think a lot of this it wouldn't happen if you didn't have a team to delegate to, right? So, but as far as you also in this kind of work, you also have to keep a lot of it with yourself in order to make it happen, because not everybody has the experience or the drive that you're asking for, and so you have to bridge those gaps with your team and lift them up in the process instead of riding them up, and it's just helping them achieve a higher level while you're trying to carry the whole team to the next stage. Another example of that, just talking about John here, is when the Council of Greatest City Schools and COVID happened, and no one had really dealt with it, except for New York public schools that dealt with anthrax scares and things of that nature. Is that we started with Bob Carlson, and he got a group of us together from some of the larger districts across the United States, and we would get together once a week, twice every other week, sometimes once a month, and create what is the plan and how do we open schools for the nation. And quite frankly, those, if you look at those white papers that we all worked on, those are what most school districts across the United States use to help open schools, and what to do
Hmm.
after something been closed, or how to approach it, how to deal with all the different circumstances that came up. And so there's a knit group of people that volunteer their time, nights, weekends, holidays, the whole nine yards, to help pull that off.
I think it's just fabulous when people come together like that. I was doing similar sorts of things at the time, working with leaders at colleges and universities, coming
Nice.
together,
Yeah.
trying to collectively understand how to respond to this, how to get themselves back open, how to react, how to cope with places that didn't want to open at all, how to cope with places that
Hmm.
didn't ever want to close, right? And try to help to navigate both of those extremes, which existed while we all figured out what was going on. And it takes people who are on the ground. A great quote from a guy that was leading at the University of Nebraska. He said, "I'd been fighting for years to get a seat at the leadership table, and then suddenly everybody was gone, and I was the only one leading at the leadership table." Right?
Right.
Everybody had left, and they're asking him, "What's happening on campus, and what should we do, and how do we get back open?" But I think those moments are also the telltale times when you learn how valuable a resource the people that are sitting in these chairs are to the communities. And I think we can never miss an opportunity to leverage that moment and turn it into a chance to really help going forward on a bunch of mundane things, which are a lot less dynamic and dramatic than the arrival of COVID in March of 2020. Is there anything we didn't ask you that you want to say about your team, about the work, about your community? And you can say
I
no.
think we pretty, hit a lot of it, but even what I think for me, and I'm very faith based, and so it's about building the person. I was real fortunate. I worked from the ground up. I started as a laborer, then a carpenter foreman, field foreman, general foreman, superintendent, project manager. I worked from the kind of the ground up, and I'm saying that because I learned by doing, and not so much in school, right? Um, Ironically, I spent a lot of time working in building schools, but the I worked with a native corporation called Nana, and they're based in Kotzebue, but also in Anchorage, Alaska. And I got a chance to work with a gentleman by the name of Chuck Green, and his vision was working with indigenous populations in the Arctic Circle, and how he would see his community, and how he'd see opportunity and opportunity to lift up. That really transformed how I looked at at business, and how do we make things effective, and how do we create opportunity. And it's not just looking at the business aspect where you make money, but who does it affect, and how do we help bring them up, right? How do we get people to rise up together? And so I don't think without that experience in learning how, going through that and spending time, I would have been as prepared as I was to embrace and love Fresno and our community here, to a point where you're digging in when no one wants to dig in, and you're loving people that aren't loving you back, and then they realize that you're real, and that you're not going to take off. You're not just here for the photo op or the money, and they realize that you're here to stay to make a difference. And so without those pivotal opportunities, I don't know if I'd be the same person I am today. And so I'm just really thankful for that. And then I have a strong wife that it's a very good superintendent, and so it's what I need. But she is, she's my partner, and she really helps encourage me. And when it gets tough, or you sit there, and because there's times you just because you get beat up from all ends for doing the right work, and not everybody sees it, and so you got to be
Sure.
prepared for that. And then the last piece is, it's, you could call it timing, or by chance and things of that nature, but God plays a big role in everything we do, and everything that I am and who I am. And so I think that opportunity and coming home and being able to serve in this capacity has been a huge blessing for me, but it helped chance to help others and give back. And so those are our motivators and drivers. And when you get tired, it's easy to lean on the guy upstairs.
Well, thank you for that, Alex. And I tell you, your reputation as a brilliant leader in educational facilities is well deserved. And I always appreciate talking to you. I always learn something from talking to you. And I think I speak for Peter. We really appreciate you being here today and sharing your words of wisdom. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Hey,
so
thank you.
much.
Appreciate you guys.